You know, this year is really proving to be one of the most retarded years that I've seen, and we've all noticed the same kind of pattern. Things happen, and then people become stupid and react in stupid ways. And believe it or not, someone who I consider one of the most smartest guys in Hollywood, maybe even the planet, unless of course it's all just an act, because he's an actor, has come out with this video. And it's none other than Morgan Freeman making a video, or rather presenting a video, about a committee to investigate Russia and their foul play and the conspiracy to essentially commit an act of war and tamper with their free elections to get Donald Trump elected and other things like that. Yeah, you know, things that Russia can't really afford to do because they're surrounded. I mean, look, firstly, was this made in like 1990 or something? Because look at that 4:3 aspect ratio. Seriously, I can do better than that. And I've just got a mid-range Canon and sloppy editing skills. And just because you have Morgan Freeman doesn't mean that your message is going to be well received, nor is it going to make you sound any more smarter than you actually are. In fact, it doesn't change how smart you are. You're still dumb. I mean, when Sam Cedar is saying that it's embarrassing, come on, even social justice warriors and progressives are not happy with this video. So let's get into it, shall we?
We have been attacked. We are at war.
Attacked? Really? In what way? Russia hasn't attacked you, firstly, in a physical way, nor have they, as far as evidence is to suggest, attacked you in a cyber way. You claim there was hacking done, you claim there was some kind of rigged election with the Russians influencing the election, but there's no evidence. And it's pretty clear that if any world power could do that, it's most likely China. They're much more powerful than Russia, believe it or not. In what way would it benefit Russia to do this right now? To essentially risk open war by tampering with the biggest superpower's election. Putin is many things, but making rash decisions like that, very risky decisions like that, is not one of them. And at war? Well, firstly, you have no casus belli. You have no reason to go to war. Russia has no casus belli. Russia hasn't even committed anything, as far as we know, that could be considered an act of war. You're trying to change the definition. What we say is war is now war. Our conspiracies, our paranoia is now war. No, Morgan, just no.
Imagine this movie script. A former KGB spy, angry at the collapse of his motherland, plots a course for revenge. Taking advantage of the chaos, he works his way up through the ranks of a post-Soviet Russia and becomes president.
So that's not really Putin's history, is it? Because, yeah, he was former KGB, but we don't really see him trying to bring about the next February Revolution or something, are we? He's very much an oligarch. He's very much a nationalist. But even then, so what if he was distraught at the collapse of his country? Technically, his country declared independence from the Soviet Union. Russia declared independence. So surely he would be more interested in making sure that the civil strife within said country would be stopped so that they can rebuild. And to some extent, before the sanctions and before NATO's stranglehold, they were doing that. Even all these feelings he may harbour against the US or the West in general, he knows damn well that he can't just act on them willy-nilly and provoke outright war, can he?
He establishes an authoritarian regime, then he sets his sights on his sworn enemy, the United States.
His sworn enemy? Has he ever come out and said that? North Korea have definitely come out and said such things. Not even China has said anything like that. He's very much a politician of the power politics variety, real politics, Machiavellian type things, call it what you will. I doubt he really sees it as that personal. He doesn't strike me as the type of president to do that. As we've seen before, he's not somebody to be irrational in that way. I just don't see him acting on these fantastical beliefs that he may or may not have. Sure, America is a rival to Russia. It's really nothing personal. It's just that their spheres of influence clash, and this is really what happens with countries like these. They clash, and it doesn't always end up in war. It's just tensions are high. Surely America is far more aggressive than Russia, because just look at what happened after the Cold War. The Cold War ended, communism was defeated, yet NATO was still around. NATO was purely set up to counteract the Soviet Union, who then later formed the Warsaw Pact. There's no need for that anymore because the Warsaw Pact is over. So NATO therefore should follow, right? But no. NATO is still around and increasing the amount of countries that is allied to it and are part of it. There are countries that aren't even part of the Atlantic Ocean that are part of NATO. Turkey, for example. Now, why is that, Morgan? Why is that, Democrats? Well, it's simple, because you have surrounded Russia. Russia is surrounded by America. From Japan and Alaska in the east to Britain in the west. You have military bases over here. We have surrounded Russia. Yet that's not an act of aggression on our part, the West's part. No. But Russia doing exercises, military exercises in its own soil is decreed as an act of aggression. Even though this is something that all countries do. And yet America is setting up anti-air missiles in Poland, which is right on the border of Russia. And no wonder he feels threatened. No wonder Russia feels threatened and are seeking allies in the Middle East and also seeking out relations with China after the whole Sino-Soviet thing had ended in the 70s. You can see why enough is enough for Putin, but even then, you're not at war with him. Tensions are just very high. You guys are on an edge. It's very much a Cold War again. I mean, yes, they are potentially dangerous, but when I see them fighting our actual enemy, ISIS and radical Islam, I can't help but feel they'd be a much more useful ally, really. I think we'd stand more to gain in cooperating than being an antagonist, because who knows, maybe this cooperation might actually spell the end for Putin, because then there'd be less of a need for that nationalist fervour and his authoritarian grasp might slip. But I don't know. That's just an hypothetical from me. Let's continue.
And like the true KGB spy he is, he secretly uses cyber warfare to attack democracies around the world.
Okay, do you have evidence for this? All you have is your paranoia and your conspiracies. And technically speaking, even though it isn't oligarchy, he is a democratically elected leader. Now, of course, there is speculation as to how legit it is, but the Russian people continue to vote him in because he's a strong leader. Even though his actual approval has dropped to some extent in recent times, he's still very much the main man that they want for the job. Who exactly is he attacking on a cyber warfare front? The only time I've seen him actually attack other nations was Georgia and, well, the Crimea. And I think he did maybe send troops in Ukraine, I'm not sure. But in the case of Georgia, he was defending an autonomous region, home to an autonomous group that Georgia was causing a lot of trouble with. And he set that right. In many ways, he was just enacting upon the treaties that he'd signed with these people. And then when it came to Crimea, he was simply trying to do what any other country would do. Britain has done things like that. America has done things like that. In order to stop a potential loss of the balance of power and to protect Russian interests in the Black Sea, he took over the Crimea. Now, I'm not saying I agree with it. I'm not saying that I think it was the right thing to do. I'm just saying that it's an understandable thing to do.
Using social media to spread propaganda and false information, he convinces people in democratic societies to distrust their media.
Mate, even Russians don't trust their own media. Nobody trusts their own media. The media has not been trusted for as long as I can remember. Of course, most of it is purely on ideological divides, but right now, in America, trust in the media is at an all-time low. The American media did that all on its own. Russia didn't have to do a single thing to create that mistrust. The American people are not that stupid. This is probably one of the more patronising points I've seen in this video. The idea that, oh no, the reason why the American people dislike and distrust the media is not because of the media's horrible actions and spreading their own fake news, which is easily able to be deciphered by the public because of things like YouTube and because of alternative media sources giving them at least as much of the truth as possible, or at least a different version that more reflects the truth. Yeah, it's not that, it's Russia. Russia is the reason. Russia is sowing the seeds of discontent. We don't have any evidence for this. We don't have any clue, but it can't be us. It can't be the establishment. It has to be them. The other. Right? I just find it funny that a bunch of progressives are using us and them tactics when they're supposed to be against that. Good one. Self-reflection's not your strong point. I mean, come on. Really?
Their political processes, even their neighbors. And he wins.
There is no evidence that he influenced your electoral process. There is literally no evidence for that. Maybe in the Crimea, there could be a case Because, let's be honest, I think it was 80% of the Crimean people wanted to join Russia. I mean, as far as I know, they could well have, because I think that is in the pro-Russia area where there's a lot of Russians living in the Ukraine. But again, I don't know. Maybe that is a cause where you could potentially have a point, but not in terms of the biggest democracy on the planet. That isn't India. Yeah, your assertions are not evidence. And what has he even won? Other than potentially saving Assad and other regional allies in the Middle East from ISIS, which was probably always going to happen once Russia did enter that war. ISIS were never going to stand a chance. But he hasn't really won anything against the US. In fact, Russia isn't really doing well against the US, and I don't think they'd potentially win a war. They might, because war is a unpredictable thing, but he isn't winning anything.
Vladimir Putin is that spy, and this is no movie script.
Oh, it very much is a movie script, Morgan. Not only is this a fantastical play drawn out of the Democratic Party's propaganda process and unbelievable lack of self-awareness and self-reflection upon itself, and even the establishment to a lesser extent, this really isn't based in reality, and you really should just look deep inside yourself and wonder, did I do the right thing signing up for this? I hope they paid you well, Morgan. I hope they paid you a lot of money for this, because not even I would do this for $1 million.
We need our president to speak directly to us and tell us the truth. We need him to sit behind the desk in the Oval Office and say, my fellow Americans, during this past election, we came under attack by the Russian government.
So hang on a sec, Morgan. Are you suggesting that Trump should go out on national television in the Oval Office and present the American public your version of the truth, what you want him to say, rather than what the actual truth is, where the evidence points to, which is there was no evidence of tampering in the American election, and that Russia isn't doing anything to antagonize you in that way? But no, instead you want him to do the opposite and say that, yeah, I'm now going to essentially toe the Democratic Party line rather than the Republican Party line and say, yes, Russia attacked us. Russia tampered with the elections. No, that's not how it works.
I've called on Congress and our intelligence community to use every resource available to conduct a thorough investigation.
But they already are, and they've come up with nothing.
To determine exactly how this happened.
Except it never happened. At least that is what the evidence suggests.
The free world is counting on us for leadership.
To be honest, with the way you lot are now, I really would not count on you at the moment. This type of shit creates more distrust amongst your allies than it does trust. I mean, I feel much safer when our government doesn't go along with American interests than when it does go along with American interests. But I think we've felt this way for quite a long time now in Europe and in Britain especially. There's a reason why a hell of a lot of British people, me included, are rather sick of the special relationship. Because it feels very one-sided, and then when every time we go out and help you in your military endeavours, we lose men, we lose women, we lose countless millions and trillions of pounds. For what? There is no gain. There's nothing to be had here. We don't get anything out of it. And to be fair, neither do you. You don't get anything out of it. Oh, I guess we get some trade and protection, even though we can protect ourselves adequately enough when we're not cutting the military.
For 241 years, our democracy has been a shining example to the world of what we can all aspire to. And we owe it to the brave people who have fought and died to protect this great nation and save democracy.
And ironically enough, when you use the pictures of World War II, it was the Russians, and I can't forget their Eastern European allies, of course, that suffered the most during that war on the Allied side, and pretty much were the reason why we won in the first place. If they had broken, everyone would have potentially lost the war, in my opinion. I don't think America would have been enough to stop the Germans completely taking over Europe, to be honest. So it's kind of ironic that you bring that up when the Soviets had a very big impact on the war and a great loss in helping to preserve our democracies, even though they didn't want to. And yes, your democracy is the gold standard, and it hasn't even been tampered with, it hasn't even been messed with whatsoever, as far as we know. So again, Why are you bringing this up? There's no need to bring that up. Because you are still a democracy. The democratic process worked in the last election.
And we owe it to our future generations to continue the fight.
Join the committee to investigate Russia. Join the fight.
Do you want World War III? Sign up. And together we shall defeat Russia. Not only will we defeat them, but we'll blow up the entire world in nuclear Armageddon. What can I say about this, guys? Well, it's just propaganda. It's leftist, corporatist propaganda designed to create a war against Russia. Now, thankfully, we've got Trump in power in America, but if he does another 180, I can very much see this happening. Even though we said that we should enter a dialogue with Putin and Russia and try to come to some kind of understanding and to ease tensions, I feel this probably isn't going to happen. Maybe it'll just continue to be on edge for years and years and years and nothing will happen. But stuff like this is just ridiculous. We can't have stuff like this because it's going to create more tension and make things even worse on the political stage. Honestly, this is probably one of the most deluded videos I've ever covered in my history on YouTube. I mean, there's been countless amounts of retarded extremists that I've covered, but honestly, this is just as bad because it's clearly designed to create a war, because they're not at war. Nobody's at war with Russia other than ISIS and maybe Ukrainian rebels. Apart from that, nobody else. Of course we have things to be concerned about with Russia, but cyber warfare, then tampering with democracies, trying to intervene and change the course of political events? No. I don't think they'd want to do that, even though they may have the capacity to do so. I believe Putin is too smart for that. Anyway, I'll end it here. It's been your boy, and I'll see you later.